All right, we're ready to go again. And you need to have your workbook available now. NTTC, National Test Training Committee, creates this lovely workbook for us for every year. They update it, and then we use it for training, for practice, you name it, we use it. It's my go-to piece. And this year's is no exception. It's just a very lovely piece of information. Let's take a look at the workbook. I'm assuming you all have one.
Yeah, Patricia, I don't have one.
All right. You're just going to have to listen along then.
Okay.
And it's okay for now that you don't have one. So just listen along.
Okay.
I'm looking for an alternative.
Yeah, and I was like, there's no way I could have I could open it on the screen maybe. Like I have it on my desktop. You want me to try to open it?
It is on page, everybody should have the 4012. And it is on page B-4 of the 4012.
What is?
I don't have the 4012.
Everyone should, well, who said they don't have it?
Margaret Self.
Margaret.
Yeah, I don't have it neither.
Okay. They were on my porch and we handed them out to the LCs.
And they're sitting at my house.
Yeah. Okay, why don't you just go, through it slowly and show everyone.
Well,
Are they online somewhere?
the
Yes.
workbooks are online, but they're out at the portal.
No, that's not true. 13.
Yeah, they are because I downloaded one to my page.
No. I didn't mean, my no didn't mean that. I apologize.
Okay.
My no means that they're also, interview form.
Can we pick one up on your porch tonight then, or?
Yes.
Okay.
And Margaret, I have a feeling yours is going to be at your house today or tomorrow because I ordered you one in the mail.
Okay, if you go on Google and you search for, you do 13614 and put IRS after it, you will go, you will get, the first search result is a link to the form.
But Steve, that's not what I'm doing.
Isn't that the interview form?
We're going to do that in a little bit, but I just wanted to introduce them to the workbook.
I apologize.
It's okay.
I apologize. I thought you were going to
It's all right.
my error.
Yeah. So the workbook has a table of contents in the front of it, and the exercises are listed in order of difficulty, at least I think they are. On the back of the contents page, there's a very nice listing of, again, all of the scenarios that are in the workbook, and it shows exactly what types of situations you will encounter in each one of the scenarios, and it's just a really nice spreadsheet, so that if there's something in particular that you want to practice, like maybe you want to practice dividends or interest or something like that, maybe you want to practice education or expenses, you can figure out which scenarios have that by checking on the back of the contents page. Then there's information about how to use the workbook, and then starting on page 4 is the very first page for a fellow named Tom Andrews. He's a single working taxpayer, and that is what we are going to approach right now. If you don't have the workbook, you know what, I could email it to you over lunch. And maybe you could open it on your own computer after lunch. Would that work?
That works for me.
Okay. All right. I will do that. Do I have your email address?
I don't think so.
Okay. How about giving it to me, please?
Sure, it's djcrav@msn.com.
Okay. And Margaret, I'll get you one also. I'll send it via email over lunch hour.
Okay.
And it won't be easy to use it, but at least you'll be able to see what we're talking about. All right, so when we encounter a taxpayer, the very first thing we get from them should be the intake interview and quality review sheet. And this is what it looks like on page 1. You can see all the demographic information that is required, including in questions like, are you a U.S. citizen? You know, it asks a multitude of questions. Birth date. Generally, the taxpayer's name is first and the spouse's name comes second. Sometimes they put them in reverse order, and then it gets kind of confusing when we go to the computer, because when we look up a taxpayer that worked with us like last year, we enter the taxpayer's Social Security number, not the spouse's Social Security number first. And that's how it'll find it. So we always want to be thinking about taxpayer first, taxpayer first. Birth dates, job titles, and look at the other questions that are on there. I'm assuming you can see these. And then it'll ask if in number 11, if there's an identity protection PIN number in the picture. Any of these questions that are not answered at all, then we have to ask the taxpayer to answer them. And we can just ask the questions and mark them ourselves, because that's our job as part of the interview with them, is to begin getting an understanding of what their situation looks like. That's everything in part 1. Part 2 is going to be their marital status and any of their dependents that are living with them.
Pat,
Yeah.
excuse me. I literally got a delivery this morning of NTTC workbooks.
Okay.
So I have copies of the 4012, the 6744, and the NTC workbook sitting on my porch. And if you
Okay.
need directions to my house, we'll figure out how, or whether we need to do alternatives, we will figure out how to get them to you as quickly as we can.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And you can see that even though they're picking their marital status, they are not actually picking their filing status, because those sometimes are questions that we need to be asking. They will fill out everything in the white areas. They will list everyone who has lived with them at their house. And then in the gray area at the bottom right, those are questions that we ask them. And that just generates conversation so we can get a very clear picture of what their situation is like. On the back of that page, they need to be checking yes or no or unsure for each one of these situations. Part 3 is about income. Part 4 is about expenses. Part 5 is about life events. See if I can locate or not the new items in here. Question 11 is received advanced child tax credit payments, which is new this year. Question 10, received an economic impact payment stimulus in 2021. That's not new this year, but the question is changed to 2021 this
You
year.
need to go up a little bit. Here we go.
There's another one too. Where's it? Steve, do you remember what the other question is?
No, I think it was just the EIP and the child tax credit.
No, there's another one. I think it's about the repayment on the IRA, or I think it's about the repayment stuff. Here it is. Contributions or repayments. It's in part 4. It's number 2. Contributions
Okay.
or repayments to a retirement account, which is also newish this year. Those are the only 3 changes on here that I know of. So they fill all these out. If they have any answers that are unsure, then we have to, work with them, ask them questions, look at the documents that they bring us, and change every answer to either yes or no. Everywhere on this page.
Excuse me, Pat.
Go ahead.
I am looking at my tax year 2021 NTC book, and my page 4, 5, and 6, the intake form is for 2020, not 2021.
Right. At the time that they created the workbook, the 2021 was not yet available.
Okay. 'Cause I
Yeah,
was
and
seeing
you're
some
going to
things
find that probably with other forms in the workbook as well. They do the best they can. God bless them. They're all just volunteers like you and I. And they have so much work that they do. But yeah, I'm sure that this form and every intake form that's in the workbook will be from 2020. But they will put whatever information is needed after the intake sheet there. Like if they needed changed information from what's on the intake sheet, they'll write it there.
Thank you.
So can I ask a quick question?
Go ahead.
So, not having experienced this at all before, the taxpayer is given this sheet by the, for lack of a better name, the receptionist, or
Yeah, when the taxpayer walks in the door, they get this sheet in hand.
okay, and so they just sit somewhere and fill it out.
Right, and we often ask them to please come 10 to 15 minutes before their appointment time so they can get this filled out. And I would say that, because we have repeat taxpayers, probably 85 to 90%, it's generally like no questions asked. They just know the drill. And many of them, there's like, I have to answer all these questions again. I did all these last year. Here's my last year's form. And I was like, no, we can't use that. They have to fill it out every year.
So for, I can imagine some people at our ages that can't really read this, I mean, because of visual issues and stuff like that, so there's nobody to help them.
Oh yeah, there is, you and me.
Oh, okay.
If they can't fill it out, then some of our sites have a client facilitator, which is a greeter, and they can help them, and they will say, let me know if you need help filling this out. Otherwise, if after that's filled out, quote unquote, they come over to our station where we are ready to interview them and prepare. If there's areas that aren't filled out, then we help them.
Let me expand on Pat's answer, because she's absolutely correct in what she said. Our job, the first thing that we need to do is look at this form with the client, because Steve, you're absolutely right. Half of our clients have no idea how to fill this out, especially page 2. Page 1 is obvious, but even that, a lot of people have trouble with. Our job is to understand their financial tax situation, and we use this form as a venue to get the answers. So many clients will be unsure simply because they don't understand the question. So we explain the question to them and they say, oh yeah, no, I don't have any of those. And we go through question by question by question.
So part of the routine, when we as tax preparers, when the taxpayer is at our desk or wherever we're sitting, we're going to go through this in detail with them.
Yes.
Right.
That's step number 1.
Okay.
Right. We actually spend as much time interviewing them as we do preparing the actual taxes, because we absolutely have to understand their tax situation.
As an example, they're going to hand us a bunch of envelopes. Half the time, they will not even have opened those envelopes. So as we go through and we say, oh, you check yes to W-2s. Where are your W-2s? Would you please give them to me? And they hand us a bunch of envelopes, and we open them for the first time. Not unusual. Matter of fact, it is usual to be in that situation. And we go through and we keep asking them for all of their envelopes until they finally have given everything to us, except for the ones that they saved to the very end because they forgot.
And then we don't throw away any of their envelopes unless we say, is it okay if I throw these away? They're just empty envelopes. Because some taxpayers want to hold on to everything.
Yep, we give it all back.
Yeah. Okay, so that was page 1. This is page 2. And you can see there are empty spaces here. So at times we need to write things in these empty spaces. Sometimes I wish these spaces there were more spaces, but there aren't. On page 3, I don't often pay a huge amount of attention to this page, but we certainly probably should. Presidential Election Campaign Fund, $3 to go to this fund for you, the taxpayer, and the spouse. If they mark yes, then we need to take care of that in the computer, which I have never seen anybody do that, and that's okay. The direct deposit, yes or no. to purchase savings bonds, to split between different accounts. These are all things that we need to know. As you practice, you will take time to read these questions in detail for yourself so that you have a good idea of what these questions are all about. And then some taxpayers will go, well, yeah, I want to do direct deposit if I'm going to get refund. But then if you have a balance due, do you want to do direct deposit? And then they'll say no there. So we do need to pay attention on that. But there again, you know, we're generally in dialogue with them during this time too.
In past years, these questions were very important because of health insurance.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of rules and regulations governing whether people had health insurance and what they did and what they didn't do. It's not as important anymore because they changed the law.
Right. Okay, so now starting at question 7. Of course, we like every taxpayer to answer every question, but if they don't answer these, it's probably best just to say, I see that you didn't answer these questions. Would you like to? And or did you intend to leave them blank? And that way, you know, some taxpayers will fill them out and some will say, no, I'm not filling those out. They are not required. And if there are answers here, we do have to tag the answers into the computer. Here's another nice writing space. And on the back of that page are more questions, and it says optional right on them. And I've noticed in this county, a lot more taxpayers are not answering these than they were when I lived in Butler County, but that's okay. We put all these answers in the computer as well. I see there's a new blurb here, opportunity to save your refund. AARP is getting really big on encouraging taxpayers to save. The next page is just information about the booklet, what the pages are about, and the consent forms. There's 3 consents in here, starting on the next page. The consent to disclose tax return information to VITA TCE tax preparation sites. This is a bunch of legalese, but what it does is if the taxpayer and the spouse agree on this form, then their information in the computer will be forwarded to next year at all VITA TCE tax preparation sites across the country. If a taxpayer is going to come back to the same site for sure the next year, then we let them know that it's not necessary to sign this because their information will be forwarded automatically to the site the next year where they came the previous year. Any questions on that one?
So, can I ask a question?
Go for it, sure.
Why would someone want to sign that then? If they're moving or?
If they are moving, they might, if they're not sure, like, you know, especially with COVID, I had a lot of people at my site last year that did not come to the site the previous year because of COVID. And I might have gotten more signatures on this page last year simply because they don't know where they're going to be coming this coming year. I don't remember.
The issue for this form is carryover. You want to encourage people to find this form, even though carryover will be automatic if they come back to the same site. We encourage people to sign it just in case, because for all we know, we could close a site down. And then if that site is closed, carryover does not work. So we really want them to sign this particular consent form.
And see, Steve and I disagree on that, but that's okay.
I have that booklet, and I'm going to say that 15080 is not in my booklet. And the additional pages were not in my booklet.
So it's only 4 pages long.
My booklet's not 4 pages long, but those forms are not in my booklet.
How many pages long is it?
My whole book,
Yeah.
I'm looking at the National Tax Training Committee
Oh,
workbook.
yeah, these pages aren't in there.
Okay, what book are you in then?
I am on the intake form that the taxpayer uses to come, when they come to our site. We give
Well,
them
the
this
intake-
in
Intake
hand.
form is in here. The intake form is in this book.
Only page 1 is. I'm on page 5 or 6 right now.
Okay, page 5, it matches the regular. Page 6 had the questions on there that you said aren't important. And then I don't have any pages after that you're referencing, so we can move on. That's fine.
Yeah, it's gonna be okay. I just wanted to
I'm
show
sure.
you what the intake booklet looks like. That's all.
Well, all
For
right.
purposes of the test, I don't think these pages are relevant. Is that correct, Pat?
Yes, that's right. But for purposes of working directly with the taxpayer, we need to know, we need to be able to inform them what they're going to sign.
My question just was that I was trying to follow it in the book. And it
I
wasn't.
know, and you got lost, and I'm sorry.
So I've got a quick question. So we present this form every time.
Yes,
And they can optionally sign it or not. And if they do sign it, then their information will come over next year if we do their taxes again to any site. Is that what you said about this?
yes, if they sign this form, their information goes to every site in the country, VITA and TCE.
Okay, so if they don't sign it, then it only comes over to the specific local site that, in our case, where we're doing their taxes, and that's it.
That's right, you got it. You got it.
Okay, so just out of experience, do most people sign this or not?
What's your question? Do most of them sign it or not?
Yeah, I mean, should we?
I guess I have less than half sign this.
Oh, at Squirrel Hill, it's more than half.
Well, because you're encouraging them, and I'm not. I told
Yeah.
you and I see this differently,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Is the question really a matter of these taxpayers having a personal position on privacy or something?
Right, that's the reason they wouldn't sign it. It's about privacy, because that's the other question is, what information is carried forward? Well, obviously, a social security number. And then once you open the carry forward, it'll have a listing of all of the names of the places that they had income from in the previous year. But it won't have any of the money amounts in it.
Okay, so it kind of helps for the next year because it all comes over, so we don't have to refill it in. Is that correct?
That's right. We need to review it, but we don't need to fill it in because it's already there.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, moving on. Another consent. This is the consent that we do highly encourage everyone to sign, because this is about using the information, remember all those questions I showed you on the previous couple of pages? And I said we need to put all the answers for these questions into the computer. A signature on this page will allow AARP Foundation to use the aggregated information for applying for grants and keeping our program running with funds. So we definitely like to encourage taxpayers to sign this one, because this keeps our program running for free for them. And when we tell them that, most of them are more than willing to sign. Even if they didn't answer the questions in the booklet, they'll still sign this. Now, what information is not used? There's no personal identifying information that AARP Foundation uses for this. So in other words, they won't be using name, address, telephone number, or social security number, or anything personally identifying, but only the answers to those questions that were on the third or fourth page there at the beginning of the booklet. Any questions on that one? And on the very last consent, we call this one AARP Foundation's charitable arm because a signature on this page will now allow AARP Foundation to gather the taxpayer's name and address and phone number and maybe call them or send them things in the mail if they think that they can offer them free programs, other services that are going to benefit the taxpayer. The majority of our taxpayers do not sign this. They tell me they get enough AARP stuff in the mail. Any questions on that one? Okay, that is the intake booklet. I think the next thing I'm going to do is to show a presentation about some pieces of tax law concerning scenario number 1 in the workbook. His name is Tom Andrews. You might want to have your workbook open and take a look at it. It is starting on about page 10 maybe. No.
Pat, are you going to show how to log into the practice lab?
Not yet. I think we'll do that after lunch. 'Cause
Okay.
It's like 20 till 12 right now.
That's fine.
And it's just going to log us back out after 10 minutes anyways. But yeah, that's definitely on the agenda for this afternoon. All right, so I'm just going to show you a presentation now.
I'm sorry, real quick, where did you say this was?
It's in the workbook. It's not in the workbook. The presentation is just going to be on my screen, but it's going to be about the scenario starting on page 4 in your workbook. Tom Andrews. You know what? I wish everybody had a workbook right now. I'm just going to do the presentation because everybody can follow the presentation. And then after lunch, Steve, are you going to be here after lunch?
Yes. Yes.
How about if you and I do a practice interview on Tom Andrews?
Sure.
But I just will not be annotating the sheet because it will be too difficult for everybody to be able to see annotating the sheet. But they can annotate their own sheets in their workbooks, except for the people that don't have a workbook, who will have one after lunch, they will at least be able to follow along. Does that work?
Let me pull up Andrews. Andrews. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. You want me to be
After lunch.
Andrews?
Sure.
Cool. Okay.
Okay. All right. I need to stop oh, there it is. Oh, this is what I want to do. Okay. I need to go back into presentation again. I need to get rid of this. Where is it? Oh. All right, I gotta go get something. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. All right, I am sharing now. No, I'm not. Why isn't it doing it?
Now I see single working taxpayer.
I know, but it's not in sharing format.
You mean it's not in slide format? You need to click on slide.
Yep, that isn't what it won't let me share it. It wants me to do something different. I'm sorry.
There was a message at the top of the screen there that I didn't get to read.
Tom Andrews. I'm going to try this again.
By the way, we are required to use Google Meet for security reasons, but it is not as good as Zoom. Some PowerPoint features can't be displayed in Google Slides.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why it did that.
It will be dropped if you make changes. I don't know what that means.
If you click the down arrow next to present, you'll get a couple different options on how to present.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, but it just like wouldn't let me do it.
Well, no, not share.
Here.
Yeah,
Present from
there you
beginning.
go.
Presenter view, present with audience, Q&A. Now is it in regular sharing mode?
Yes.
Okay.
Now we see the presentation.
All right. Single
Thank you,
working
Kimberly.
taxpayer, Tom Andrews.
You have more experience with this than we do.
Yeah, I know, but this was like really frustrating. It shouldn't have done that. What it was doing. That's all right. Okay. So what will Tom Andrews' filing status be? There are two criteria for a filing status: the marital status on the last day of the tax year, and persons living in the home. They may or may not be dependents or supported by the taxpayer. What's the importance of filing status? Well, many tax items get affected by the filing status. And you can see this in your Pub 4012 if you have one, on page A1, chart A, or the standard deduction, the tax rate bracket, eligibility for certain credits. We're going to do more with filing status tomorrow. There are 5 choices for filing status. Obviously, Tom Andrews is single, and that's why it's red, and that's the only thing that we're going to talk about in this particular presentation. The other ones are married filing jointly, married filing separately, head of household, and qualifying widower. So Tom Andrews was not married as of December 31st. He was married but legally separated. If you're married or legally separated, and there may be more advantageous filing status if the taxpayer has dependents or other qualifying persons, like head of household. What about income? Taxable and not taxable income. Again, there are lists of these in Pub 4012. What are some examples? If you go to tab D1 in 4012, you can see lots of them. Earned versus not earned. Examples of that are also in tab I. 4012 is an excellent reference tool. I use it a lot. So let's just think about wages. Is that earned or not earned? Gets reported on Form W-2. And, you could reference it back to the intake interview form. I believe it's question 1 in the income area. Here's what a W-2 looks like. We need to verify that it is the current tax year when it comes to us. We need to verify that it has the taxpayers or spouses or dependents' Social Security number on it. I actually have had a taxpayer present items to me that do not have their Social Security on them, and I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't yours. And we have to talk about that and figure out what to do with it. What about W-2 box 12 codes? That would be right here. Double D is healthcare. So this would be employer provided health insurance. D is elective deferrals to a section 401k, like retirement. Double D is health coverage. Don't confuse D and double D. There's a whole list of these codes in D6 of 4012. What's out of scope on a W-2? Box 12, code R is out of scope, code T is out of scope, code Q is out of scope, unless you're certified for military. I actually did certify somebody for military last week. What else is out of scope on a W-2? Ministers and church workers. Very high earned income that is subject to additional Medicare tax, like married filing jointly over $250,000, married filing separately $125,000, and single at $200,000. And you can see that's where we're working here with Tom Andrews. What about interest as income? Is that earned or not earned? What are the sources of interest? We can check on the intake interview form. We should be able to make sure that they have checked yes if they have interest.
This is a little nit, but the previous screen about the income out of scope.
Yeah.
Is this gross income? Is this taxable income? Is this?
This would be,
Adjusted gross.
I think it's going to be gross, right?
It's everything is AGI, adjusted gross income.
Right, right.
Okay.
Interest on reporting it on the tax forms, or as it comes on the forms. We 1099 INT or 1099 OID. They might be on brokerage statements. They might be on Schedule K1. Or it might even be that there's no tax form from the payer, because if you know about interest, if an entity gives you interest and it's less than $10 for the year, they are not required to send you a statement. So every time we must ask the taxpayer, do you have any other income to tell me about? Or what other income do you have to tell me about? And if they say, oh, I had $5 from my checking account interest for the year, then we need to write that next to the interest question on the intake form, even though they did not present to us a specific tax form for it. All interest must be included on the return, taxable and tax exempt, because it impacts other calculations. This interest is taxable except muni obligations from these areas and U.S. obligations like T-bills, saving bonds, etc. They're fully taxable for federal but exempt from state. This is what a 1099 INT looks like. If this box right here is checked, FATCA, then it goes out of scope. I have never seen this box checked in all the years I've worked. This is a brokerage statement showing interest. If FATCA is checked, it's out of scope. If we see out of scope, then we just, explain to the taxpayer that there are certain items that we can't do, and we just can't do their return, and then we refer them to a professional. What about unemployment compensation? Earned or not earned? Taxable or not taxable? It's generally taxable but may not be state taxable. And that's true for Pennsylvania. If it's received under federal or state laws, we need to check the intake interview sheet to see if they had any. This is what a standard unemployment form 1099-G looks like. If it has anything in box 7, 8, or 9, it's out of scope. This is generally not the type of unemployment forms that we see here in the state of Pennsylvania, at least none that I've seen. So what is adjusted gross income? It's total income minus adjustments. What are those adjustments? I think this is in the next section after income in the intake booklet. And there again, you know what, if you're looking in your workbook, you can see what Tom Andrews has already indicated. And we will talk about that more after lunch too. He had an IRA contribution. It can never be more than taxable compensation. There are contribution age limits for a traditional IRA. There is no contribution age limit in tax years beginning after December of 2019. And the Roth IRA has no age limit. Okay, so this looks like it's old too, doesn't it? Sorry. Contribution and deduction limit for tax year 2020 was $6,000, $7,000 if over 50. That might have gone up this year. We will tell you about that when we were going over federal tax law on Thursday or on Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday. The allowable contribution amount applies to all IRAs. In other words, if you have more than one IRA, you cannot put in $6,000 to each one. It's a amount of $6,000 total. Some or all traditional IRA contributions may be non-deductible. The allowable contribution in excess of the deduction becomes the basis in the IRA. This is other adjustment information for IRA contributions. For the most part, our software takes care of what's going on with IRA contributions and how it affects the bottom line of the return. I don't often worry about that, and I don't believe I've ever seen anybody donating more than they're allowed to. Remember that the taxpayer does have until April 15th, or the due date of the return, to make a contribution for the current tax year and still get it included on this year's return. So that means that maybe we're doing their return on March 1st and they're telling you they're still going to make a contribution on April 1st for the preceding tax year, but they haven't done so. We can still write it that way on the tax return, and just continually remind the taxpayer that they are responsible for getting that contribution taken care of.
Do people ever ask you, and can the software do a what if? What if I give $5,000? How will that impact my return?
We can just write it in and take it back out again.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Adjustments with IRA contribution, excess contribution. If you did do an excess contribution, you have until the due date of the return to withdraw the excess. Otherwise, you get subject to a 6% penalty each year. It goes out of scope. Adjustments, student loan interest. It's paid on qualified student loan for post-secondary education expenses. We do see this student loan interest, at least I do. I've seen student loan interest. It's a very easy entry inside of TaxSlayer. What are the adjustments? The limitations can't be more than $2,500 per year, so that if they come in and they say, I paid $3,000 on student loan interest, we can only allocate $2,500 as an adjustment. And then it phases out as your AGI increases. What about other deductions? Those are subtractions from a taxpayer's adjusted gross income. It reduces the amount of tax owed. And then like the standard deduction or itemizing deductions. We see almost no itemizing deductions anymore since the standard deduction has gone up so high. What is the standard deduction? It's a fixed reduction of AGI based on filing status, age, blindness, dependency, subject to change each year, and you can find more information about it in 4012. What about the charitable contributions deduction? It's up to $300. Charitable contribution is deductible without doing the deductions pay forms. It's limited to $300 for a single or $600 for married filing jointly. Cash contributions only. If they are doing itemized deductions, then they cannot use the 300 or 600 as a deduction separately. This is a 1-year thing. Last year it was only 300 total, but now it's gone up to 600 total for married filing jointly. What about other credits? They reduce tax dollar for dollar. There are non-refundable and refundable credits. Took my pea-sized brain a long time to understand and figure out what's non-refundable and what is refundable. I'm sure that 4012 addresses this in more detail if you need more information on it, and it will keep coming up until you get a clear understanding of what that means too. Retirement savings contributions credit, is that refundable or non-refundable?
Hey, Pat, it's
Okay.
noon now. Do you have a
Yeah.
lot of more slides, or do you want to continue this
I
after?
don't know
1
how
o'clock?
many there are here. Yeah, there's 5 more.
Oh, okay.
This gets reported on Form 8880, and there's a reminder inside of TaxSlayer for it. So, if there is no contribution to a retirement account, we just need to ask the taxpayer if they made one or if they plan to make one, because it might not show up anywhere on a tax document. If the contribution is on their W-2, it'll automatically generate the 8880 in the computer. What are other retirement savings contributions codes in box 12? D, E, G, double A, double B, double E, they all go to Form 8880. And this is what the whole drop-down box looks like there for box 14. It's really hard to see. We almost always choose other when we come in here because none of the other items in this box are for Pennsylvania at all. Voluntary contributions, mandatory contributions. Just choose other. Okay. All right. All right, that's all I'm going to do on here. It is 5 after 12. I'll see you back here at 5 after 1. Have good lunch.
Should we log back in, or should we just leave it?
You can
It's
just
your
stay.
choice. You can stay. There's no big deal.
Okay.